In the last video, I talked to my friend Mori-san for about 35 minutes. I did most of the talking for 30 minutes. We talked about how much it cost living in Japan, and the rent and the bills. And it was 5 a.m. in the morning for me. I did most of the talking unscripted. It was not a very good and informative video, yet it got 11 views. That's a lot of views, 3 of which were probably from me and my friend. But 8 views, that's still a lot of views. So I thought maybe I should upscale the production. Hello, to give you a little background, my name is Lee, or at least that is my most known name around certain communities. Judging by that name and how I spell that name, I'm Chinese, and my friend is also Chinese. But currently I'm calling him Mori-san because that's a bit more Japanese, because he's currently living in Japan. And I'm currently in the States, considering to move to Japan soon. I have lived in Japan in the past, but that was like a decade ago. And I also visited Japan very frequently for the last 2-3 years. I visited Tokyo, the very big city, very big famous cities such as Tokyo, such as Osaka, Yokohama, Kyoto, etc., etc. Also some of those less known areas such as Aomori, one of my favorite little towns to visit. And it's not small. Like you can actually go to Aomori and have a very lonely yet lovely winter by yourself. So that's what I did for the 2022 and 2023, I believe. So in the following video, I'm going to compare the price of living in the States comparing to how much it cost living in Japan. And this time, as I said, I intended to upscale the production, so I have a list and I have some data here. I have a PC here, I know you can't see it, but I have a screen here with some data. And let's get started with weekly grocery costs. For families, weekly grocery costs in the Bay Area is around $300 per week in the Bay Area. So that's one of the most expensive areas in America. Now, in American, on average, it's about $270. So if you have more than one child, or if you're single, obviously these numbers doesn't apply to you accurately. So you have to deduct those numbers by yourself. For example, I live by myself, but I have to spend more than $400-500 per week on my grocery bills due to my unique circumstance of having a lot of pets. And I like to eat well. I think you can see that. So everyone has their unique, different standards. But I'm just going to make the case for you that why living in Japan is much cheaper than America, and how much cheaper can you expect. So again, if you are a family, a single family, it costs you about $300 a week in the Bay Area to buy your grocery bills, $270 per week on average in the States. So again, in certain areas, it can be a little bit less. In Tokyo, which is the most expensive city in Japan, you have to spend maybe around $67 to $100 per week per family for the grocery bills. So that's a lot less. So if you live by yourself, you probably have to spend like what, $30 to $50 per week if you cook for yourself. And if you live in Yokohama, Japan, Yokohama is this also very big, very fancy city, in my opinion, next to Tokyo, around 40 minutes by the train and maybe 35 minutes by taxi. Yokohama is one of my favorite cities as well because it's kind of like New York City with a lot less people and a lot more cleaner. And people are, I would say people are much more polite, but not necessarily nicer. So people who have been to Japan or lived in Japan would know exactly what I mean by that. And Osaka, in Osaka is cheaper than Yokohama, cheaper than Tokyo. In Osaka, you probably have to spend at most, I would say $80 a week if you were doing, say, groceries for your family. Individuals, maybe $20. So Tokyo, Yokohama, Osaka, in the order of how expensive it is. The most expensive is Tokyo, least expensive is Osaka, and Osaka is also a very big city. Osaka is also very functional. Osaka is kind of like the America of Japan, I would say, because people there are much more open, much more gangster. So again, like pretty much everywhere in Japan is like as safe as you can possibly imagine for any people who are from the States or who are from the UK, because in the great UK, I heard there are a lot of violence going on these days as well. But just to give you a brief idea of how safe in Japan is, I think in Tokyo, in the Tokyo area, there's 1 to 2 people die from car accidents every single day. So 1 to 2. And I would say in most days, like you don't see any deaths. And in most days, you don't hear any murder. I was talking to this elderly Japanese woman 2 years ago. We had a conversation, and she was complaining to me of how the crime has gone nuts, basically. And I asked her politely, I was like, what do you mean by that? Like, how many crimes you're seeing nowadays, like per day, per week, per month? Because I like numbers, and I'm Chinese, I like numbers. And she told me, well, you know, in my days, so that's like 30 years ago, maybe 20, 30 years ago, I don't know. In my days, maybe there's like 1 murder per year, but nowadays you hear like 2, 3 murders per year. Like, what has the world become? Like that kind of complaint. And 2, 3 murders per year. I mean, I live in the Bay Area, and you know, an hour drive from Auckland, an hour drive from San Francisco. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but 2, 3 murders per year, that's like, to a lot of people, that's like as safe as heaven. In the States, of course. Now, if you're from China, we don't see that much of you know, crimes either. But I think Japan generally have a lower rate of crimes than China, if I'm not wrong, and much lower, you know, China and Japan, much lower than the States. I think in the United States, I think more than 50% of murders are just unsolved. Like, you can't solve them. That's what I heard. I might be wrong. Anyway, let's go back to the main topic of the day: how much it costs to rent in the United States comparing to Japan. In the States, the median rent is about $3,600 per week, and this data is from Zillow in the Bay Area. If you live in places like Austin or some other cheaper areas, you have to spend around maybe $2,000 per month. So again, we're talking about like an apartment. And if you live by yourself, I believe most people are living by themselves, maybe sharing an apartment, which is always nice, right? You have to spend maybe at least $1,500 per month, and that is like on the low end. I would say around $2,000. That's how much you have to pay to share a room with a roommate. And of course, that's hopefully utilities concluded. But in Japan, in Tokyo, which again is in terms of big cities, I think Tokyo has outdone itself. I think Tokyo is the best city in the world. And you know, New York City is great. You know, Beijing and Shanghai is great. But New York City is, again, I don't have to get into that, but not very nice lately. And Tokyo, in my opinion, is as functional and as wonderful as a capitalistic city can ever get in this time of human history. So that's my compliment for Tokyo. So how much it costs to rent there? I'm going to attach a picture of a general view of my friend's little room, and he's spending about, I think, 70,000, less than 70,000 yen per week, per month, to rent that place, and that is about $453 per month. If you want to rent in Japan, you have to pay, I think, like 2 to 3 months in total of rent before you actually move in. And of course, there is this non-discrimination against gaijin in certain areas, in certain apartments. A lot of them feel completely comfortable to say, because you are a foreigner, we can't really rent anything to you. But that is becoming less and less true in the market, because Tokyo is one of the most international cities in the world. So in Tokyo, comfortably speaking, you can find a place to live with a reasonable price, without all those, all those annoying little details that you may get in the States. Overall, I suppose I would say Japanese people and people in Japan are not as crazy as some Americans. So that goes, that goes both ways. Whether you are a tenant or whether you are a landlord, you're gonna expect less conflicts in Japan. Also, the price is lower. So in Japan, if you want rent for, say, a single man or woman, you have to spend maybe $450 in Tokyo per month. That is possible, but it's not in the central area. My friend, for example, he's spending $450 per month, and he's living 30 minutes away from the absolute center of Tokyo. So the absolute center of Tokyo, a good reference point would be the palace, the Imperial Palace, that is in Ginza, 25 minutes away from Roppongi Hills, which is where I often go to because I have some stuff to do there, some work to do there sometimes, from time to time. And Roppongi Hills is kind of like this bit more new money area comparing to the old money Ginza kind of style. So if you do wish to live in, say, Ginza, around Ginza, or in Roppongi Hills, around the Roppongi Hills, basically the more central areas of Tokyo, you can expect a rent that's at least, I would say, 10,000 yen. So that is roughly $650 per month, and you get to live in the most central area of Tokyo. And again, Tokyo is a wonderful, wonderful city, in my opinion. $650 per month. That is pretty damn cheap. If you want to live a bit more, maybe 2 LDK, that is the measurement, 1 LDK, 2 LDK. That is the measurement of Japan. If you want to live a 2 LDK in Japan, in Roppongi, in some of the bit more fancy, more central areas, you have to spend maybe, I would say, a reasonable expectation of 150,000 yen to USD. That is less than $1,000 US. Less than $1,000, you get to live in the absolute best part of Japan. And this is not a minimum, this is an average. Like, I would personally be somewhat surprised if someone is paying, more than that just to get to live a functional, beautiful little place with kitchen, with shower and everything, unless you prefer to live a bit more fancy or you're being scammed. So that is obviously one of those possibilities. There are companies in Japan that likes to cheat and trick foreigners and individuals who doesn't have a very good circumstance in their life. There are companies like that who like to treat people like shit in Japan, just like there are a lot of people in the States. But of course, there's always more people who likes to lie and cheat and hustle in the States than there are in Japan. So if you have experience dealing with those people in the States, you should be okay going to Japan. Just keep your eyes open, don't actually fall into any traps just because they're Japanese. Like, oh, Japan is so nice, everything is, perfect, blah, blah, blah. No, like people are people. That's going to remain to be true for thousands of years to come. So that is rent in Tokyo comparing to the States. Let's look at this place that I personally like very much, Yokohama. Yokohama is, away from Tokyo, 35 minutes to 40 minutes away from Tokyo. And I like Yokohama a lot. And Yokohama is about 20-25% cheaper in terms of everything than Tokyo. And it's about the same living standards as Tokyo. You make around the same amount of money as Tokyo, whatever the job you take. Most Americans with a bachelor degree, they probably would start with like an English teaching job there. But again, you need a bachelor degree to do that. There's a lot of programs for that. And you also have to be, at least a green card holder to have a citizenship, because if you went to if you went to a school, a college, and obtained a degree in say United States, but you don't have a green card or you don't have a citizenship, I think it would be a bit more tricky for you to get a job such as teaching English to the local students in Japan. Now, I'm not exactly an expert in terms of looking for jobs in Japan, but according to what I know, there's a lot of resources out there. You can check, like the website of the official Japanese embassy. I think they have some good resources there. Or you can, again, check with ChatGPT. ChatGPT now has a search function, so you can just literally search some good resources. If you can't really find them through Google, you can try ChatGPT. I've been using it. It's wonderful. And let's get back to the rent part. We just talked about Tokyo. We just talked about Yokohama. Arguably, those are the two most expensive cities to live in Japan. Again, I haven't lived everywhere in Japan, but in terms of cities, Tokyo and Yokohama is like the big cities of Japan. And of course, there are the places like, Osaka, Kyoto. Let's talk about Osaka. Osaka, I would say it costs you around $50,000 per month to rent. 50,000 Japanese yen. 50,000 Japanese yen, that is about 324 US dollars. Currently, the Japanese yen is pretty low every single year for the last 4 years. Around the time of Halloween, I would say. So the 4 months of the year around Halloween, I would say from September to December of every single year for the last 4 years, the Japanese currency just, always low around those few months, then always sort of like jump back, go back to whatever it was previously later next year. I don't know why, but I started visit Japan frequently since 2.5 years ago, so I've been paying a bit more attention to their currency exchange rate, to US dollars, to Chinese yuan, and to other currencies. So that's just my sensation. With that being said, if you want to travel to Japan, to get your visit, to get your travel first before you actually move there, I would say the best time to do it is actually, personally, I would say it's fall or winter or early spring. So around this time, November, December, January, February, because these 4 months typically has less tourists, less travelers. I always have a difficulty with pronouncing that word. Tourist. Always have less travelers in those 4 months, and within those 4 months is also actually when the animals at their best state to be eaten because they're fat in winter. So when I travel to Japan, I would always go to Japan around this area to have the best food, and of course to see less people, because Tokyo is very crowded and Japan is possibly the #1 most popular destination for all travelers of the world. I think that is painfully true for the Japanese government, because they both want those travelers, but also they're like, holy shit, that's a lot of people. Like we don't want anything bad to happen, do we? So it's very difficult to manage for them. But it's very good for me to visit. So sucks for them, but good for me. And since we have talked about food, restaurants in Japan, let me just get into the next thing on the item. That is, again, food, but going out to eat. If you want to go out and eat in Japan, congratulations, that is the best place, at least Tokyo, that is the best place on planet Earth. Because in terms of, I would say, Michelin level restaurants, I think Tokyo has the most as a city in the world. So more than Paris, more than London, more than the Bay Area, more than New York City, and it's cheap. It's much cheaper. So earlier this week, I ordered some food from a friend through Uber Eats. Somehow Uber Eats is extremely popular in Japan, not very popular in the Bay Area. I think it's because DoorDash, I have no idea. I ordered maybe $80 worth of food, delivery fees included, to my friend, and his response was it was very good food, and we both agreed that this would cost at least $120 in the States if you want the same level of food if you chose to eat at the restaurant. So if you want to have it delivered, you have to expect at least 140 US dollars. What I'm trying to say here is whatever you eat in when you eat out, when you decided to go to a restaurant, unless it's chain restaurant, so they always have like a bit more stable price at McDonald's or Panda Express or KFC. They have much more stable prices there. Even so, you can expect much less in Japan, in Tokyo, because international prices are different. In a more general term of comparison, you can expect fully to pay at least 30 to 50% less than what you would normally pay in the States. And I forgot to mention one important thing, that's tips. Again, in the States, you have to pay 20% tips. So I forgot to mention that. That is, of course, additional. In Japan and most other countries, what a surprise, you don't have to pay tips. So far we have got the groceries, we got going out to eat, we got rent. As a general summary, for groceries, you have to spend maybe per each individual $50 per person at most in Tokyo. And going out to eat, you have to spend maybe I would say at least 35% to 50% less than what you would normally spend in the States. In terms of rent, we have gone into a lot of details in this, but generally speaking, if you want to live a bit more fancy, let's say, $1,000 per month is more than enough to get you a very good place in central Tokyo. There are a couple of other things that I should mention. Tuition. If you wish to go to a school in Japan, such as from, say, language school to university, I'm not very familiar with the high school there, but I assume if you plan to go to a high school there, it should be taken care of by your parents. So if you're watching this video, thank you very much. But you probably shouldn't be as concerned economically, as you probably are not making any money right now, which is, good, you're young. So as for tuition, if you go to a language school or a university, you can expect $4,000 to $10,000 per year. There are programs in Japan that they waive a lot of fees, probably not all of them. Some of those universities does offer full scholarship, but they are a bit more difficult to get. But once you get that, it's like completely free. I think you have to pay for like some transactional or some transportational fees, that's it. But generally speaking, you can expect at least $4,000, at most 10,000 US dollars per year. So the $10,000 one would be, like a medical school or, something that's a bit more expensive, but that's like a lot cheaper than what you would expect in the States, obviously. And health insurance, you have to cost about $30 to $50 per month. Another amazing thing about the health insurance, or should I say the health system in Japan, is they have this 30% rule. What it means is you pay at most 30% of everything that is going to cost you, whatever the sickness or injury that you may have. At most, you pay 30% for the general idea of if you get sick, if you get injured, it shouldn't cripple you economically. So you pay at most 30%. Generally speaking, 10 to 30%. Now, those two things are the things that I'm personally not familiar with because I never gone to a school, a university, or a language school in Japan, or ever got sick in Japan. So that never happened to me. What I do have more experience with is the transportation. The transportation in Japan is majorly two types of transportations. One is by the train, the subway, the stations. The other is by taxi, and sometimes you have to mix those two. Now, taxis in Japan is very knowingly expensive. To give you a general idea, if you want to get from, say, the airport to the hotel or the wherever your destination is, if it's like an hour away, you can fully expect the taxi's price to be at least $220. They vary, of course. Sometimes they change the price. I think they change the price daily, actually, slightly, only slightly, but at least $200. Now, if you live in the States, say you want to go from San Francisco to San Jose, that's roughly an hour, roughly 50 minutes really. You can expect maybe like an Uber X of $60. So in Japan, it's much more expensive if you want to take the taxi. But recently they do have like Uber as well. They offer slightly less than what you would normally expect in taxis, but still you should expect at least 180-ish at least. The best thing to do is to take the subway unless you're in a hurry. So the way I see it is, if you have to take taxi, that's probably mostly because you are in a rush. You probably want to get to a certain place before a certain time. So in that case, you should expect maybe I would say 20 to 35% faster. So if you have to say go from, we use this example earlier, if you have to go from Tokyo to Yokohama, if you are not in a hurry, 40 to 45 minutes ish, you take the subway, you take the train, that's like a reasonable expectation. But if you are in a hurry, you have to take taxi, that's going to cost you at least 10,000 yen. So that's around $60 ish, I think, in the current, let's see, $65 in the current exchange rate of November 15th, 3 p.m. ish. And $65, that's roughly how much you spend in a month if you never take taxi. If you only take, say, the subway and other methods as well, mainly the subway, mainly the trains, mainly the stations, it costs you about a few hundred yen. I think it's like 300, 200, 300, sometimes 500 yen per trip, and it's very, very, very functional. The other thing I wanted to mention is, you only have to expect, if you don't have a car, you only have to expect $65 per month to take the train. If you do want to have a car, first of all, why do you want to have a car in Japan? You don't really need it. At least in Tokyo, at least in the big cities, you don't need a car unless you have more money that you are like, you know what, I want my own car, I want my vehicle. That makes sense. In the States, in a lot of circumstances, is you need a car. The public transportation system is really messy in the States. It's very outdated in the States. So in, say, New York City, maybe you don't need a car. In San Francisco, I would argue you need a car. Many people would argue differently. But anywhere else, any other city other than, say, San Francisco, New York City, Washington, D.C., you most definitely need a car. In Japan, however, you can live without a car perfectly functionally. And if you do want a car in the States, it will cost you at least $300 to $700 per month, depending it's either used or new. And of course, gasoline. You also have to spend, I assume, $200 to $300 per month at most, at least, for the gas. But again, in Tokyo, you don't need a car at all. It's extremely functional, a little difficult to learn, to get used to in the beginning because it's a little complicated, but trust me, it is the most functional public transportation system in the world. At least that is my own opinion. So again, overall, considering groceries, considering going out to eat, rent, tuition, health insurance, and cars, transportation, gas, etc., you can expect, no matter where you're from, born, raised from, unless you're from like a small area in the States. But even if that's the case, you can still expect less money being spent in Tokyo, which is the most expensive area of Japan. So if you are from, say, New York City, say, San Francisco, the Bay Area, some of the bit more expensive places, what you can save from, everything you make is at least 30 to 50%. So you can spend less money by the margin of 30 to 50% in Japan than you would typically expect in. I say the word expect a lot, don't I? I should try to minimize that. And one more thing that you should know is you do make less money in Japan. So if you wish to get a job in Japan, a good one would earn you maybe, again, we're talking about US dollars, maybe 2,000 US dollars per month. So the reasonable thing to do, if you want to, get started, per se, is you want to work as hard as you can, save as hard as you can in the States for preferably at least 6 months. If you are really going for like the hustling and saving kind of a method, kind of a strategy, I would say it's probably reasonable to say you can save up to $2,000 a month. And if you do it for 6 months, 8 months, you have like what, 10 to 15K. That's enough to get you started. If you do decide to come to Japan and start living and working in Japan, Zip Air is your best friend. It has a very strict policy in terms of change or return or refund your ticket. It's not as flexible, but it's available in a lot of areas and it's very cheap. So that's your best friend. And if you have $12,000 to $15,000, and if you are smart with your money, I would say that would give you enough time to actually find a job at some point in Japan, or find a good school in Japan. So with everything just said, overall, no matter where you're from, you can expect at least 30 to 50% less than what you would normally spend in the States in Japan. If you are from, say, San Francisco or New York City, Washington, D.C., obviously, you have to spend a lot more money there. So you can, for sure see at least 40 to 50% less in all your bills. If you are from, say, a bit more, slightly cheaper areas, Austin, for example, is a very good place, very good city, very, you can find expensive places to eat. You can find cheap places to go out to in Austin, and it's still a big city, but the rent in Austin cost like a lot less than what you would normally pay in New York City or in the Bay Area. So if you're from those areas, I would say you can still expect less to be paid in Japan, but probably not that much less. We just mentioned pretty much all the prices we have here. If you there's one more thing, I suppose. If you do decide to go to Japan and work or study or live, and you don't have that much of cash, I'm just going to throw out my assumption here. You don't have that much of cash in your bank account. What I would recommend you to do is work as hard and save as hard as you can for 6 to 8 months. Within those 6 to 8 months, get those online resources to get your foundational Japanese ready, and work and save as much as you can. Then I can expect you to save, I would say, at least $15,000, possibly even more. Because if you save as much as you can, work as much as you can probably save up to $2,000 per month. So that is obviously a high expectation, but let's just say 15K, 10K, let's say $10,000. $10,000 is enough to get you started on everything. But I would recommend you to get a remote job that you can do in English. That is like the point there. Like my friend Mori-san, who I had the last video for, who I did the last with, he speaks English fluently, I would say quite perfectly, and he is currently working at an international insurance agency, and he is getting paid more than the regular Japanese people with less hours. His schedule is pretty messed up right now, so he has to wake up midnight in Japan's time and work remotely, taking phone calls, and the nature of his job is basically being pushed over and being screamed at occasionally. He has to deal with a lot of nonsense, people who are, say, unhappy with how much more or how much less they're paying with their insurance, or there are some individuals who doesn't speak good English, who live in the States, doesn't speak fluent English, speaks Chinese fluently. My friend is Chinese. They could speak in Chinese, but these customers insist on speaking English to have a more difficult time. So the nature of his job is pretty messy and very stressful. With that being said, I would urge you, if you do decide to go to Japan, try to find a remote job that you can work for with less stress, that earns you more money than the average Japanese people does, with less hours, and doesn't require you to work in America's time. Those jobs are hard to find, but not impossible to find. It is reasonable to find such a job within within certain tech companies, within certain insurance agencies, but I'm not very familiar with the job market. If you can earn $3,000 a month without you have to say wake up 2 a.m., work to 7 a.m. in Japan's time, and go back to sleep, and maybe for 3 or 4 hours, and wake up again, then go to a language school or whatever, like that is not a good life. So if you can somehow manage to find a job that doesn't require you to be there, to actually be on the phone 9 to 5 in America's time, then that earns you even just $2,000, $2,000 to $3,000. That's enough for you to sustain. And the best case scenario, of course, is if you can find a remote job that can earn you $5,000-$6,000 a month. That's the best case scenario. $6,000 a month in terms of that can get you pretty much everything. You can get entertainment, you can get the best food, you can get health insurance, tuition. You can probably even buy a car if you wanted to. Not recommended. You don't really need to. And that concludes our video. I hope this video, it's still very messy, but I'm experimenting here. One more thing to mention before I go away is there is an ebook in the description that I do hope you get. It is 10 ancient wisdoms from ancient China. Again, that's 10 ancient wisdoms from ancient China. It has a lot of relatable topics of what I just talked about. Yes, I know I just talked about Japan through this entire video, but there's a lot of diary-like content within the ebook that has mentioned foreign cultures. So of course, Japan is included. So also within the ebook, I have included a list of recommended films, Chinese and Japanese films in equal numbers. Films, anime, TV shows, all very highly rated, with links to the resources that you can watch them for free. Most of them. Some of them you have to sign up for a membership to actually watch it for free for a month. Then you probably have to cancel the membership. And that concludes the video, and thank you very much for watching. And for the next video, I promise you I'm gonna make it a bit more neatly.